Next one up, we have CT Fusion. Derek, please take the stage.
Okay, so hi everyone. So first, before I jump in, I want to just do a big thank you to Foresight and all the mentors that we worked with over the last few weeks. And it's been a great experience being here. We really enjoyed it. And so our thesis as a company is that transitioning to 100% clean energy will require new innovations. And so in the previous talks, we heard about increasing the sink terms for pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. We're very much focused on decarbonizing the source terms as well to attack this issue from both ends. If we look at the current world, upwards of 85% of our energy currently comes from fossil fuels, which release harmful emissions that are of concern for climate change, as we know. If we look at our current toolkit for decarbonizing those source terms, you have candidates like fission, which is a zero carbon energy source at its base, but it does generate long-term radioactive waste and has low public support as well. Then you have wind and solar and other variable renewables like that, which are fantastic for decarbonizing. But they do leave a power generation gap because of their intermittency. And so as their market shares expand, this puts more and more demand on energy storage technologies to even out their supply and demand curves. And so we think that right now and in the foreseeable future, there's a strong demand for a new carbon-free energy solution that is firm and reliable. And so this would be a challenging problem to tackle if the energy demand was flat. But what we see is actually a growing energy market that's projected through 2050. And the majority of this growth is slated to come from non-OECD countries. So this is the China, India, and especially Africa going towards the middle of the century. That's where a lot of the growth is going to come from. And so this represents a $1 trillion electricity use market with strong growth potential across all sectors. And so in this movement to electrify everything, you're seeing transportation using more electricity with EVs, you're seeing industrial usages as well. And we think that trend will continue. However, this is our primary focus is the electricity markets, but also we're focused on high-grade industrial process heat so we can think of the entire energy ecosystem in decarbonizing all source terms across our entire planet. We see that the customer base servicing this demand will consist of power plant manufacturers and then utilities and independent power producers. And so these are the customers we're going after with our products. And so we believe that fusion can meet this growing energy demand with the smallest environmental impact of all available options. And it can provide firm carbon-free power generation. So this is on demand at the flip of a switch when you need it. And it's a perfect complement to renewables like wind and solar to even out the supply and demand curves and won't require as much energy storage if you have fusion on the grid. What's wonderful about fusion is that the fuel is available worldwide and is virtually free. You don't have this localization of resources that can drive a lot of geopolitical issues. And so basically, wherever there's water or water vapor, you have energy for fusion. And then if you compare it to fission, that's what all nuclear power plants around the world currently run on. There's no risk of a meltdown, and there's no long-lived radioactive waste with fusion. And so those aspects are what really motivate us for the past decades to do this R&D and this energy source, because it is the benefits of nuclear energy without those negatives that prevent its expansion. And we're having that very, very high power density. This translates into a minimal land requirement for these power plants that with a better safety profile can now be located near a population center. So to compare this, a solar panel is operating on, like at the best, about 1 kilowatt per meter squared power loading on the top. Our systems will have 1 to 10 megawatts per meter squared of power loading. So you're looking at 1,000 times more power dense than a solar panel, for instance. And so the current landscape for fusion is quite diverse, and it's getting more diverse as a function of time, but it's dominated by a very large publicly funded project in France called ITER, which has a current price tag of 65 billion euros. And so that is a technical approach to fusion that is likely to work. However, it's on a path to commercial inviability, in our opinion, because of the cost. And so you see all of these other fusion startups, including ourselves, pursuing faster, cheaper, more compact approach to fusion. And so our company is focused on a unique patent approach to fusion called the Dynamac that is built on over 30 years of US DOE experience in R&D. Since our founding as a company in 2015, we've secured 3 RPE awards for our fusion energy approach and have gone through extensive technical due diligence in each stage. We have a projected competitive levelized cost of electricity targeting 5 cents per kilowatt hour or less, which we think will make us globally competitive across all energy markets. And to get there, we have a manageable project risk. And in short, we could go for hours on our technology, but just to suffice it to say that our technology simplifies the production of fusion energy by unifying magnetic confinement heating and current drive. And those elements are what you need to achieve net gain fusion. And we aim to provide flexible power outputs of 100 megawatts up towards a multi-gigawatt scale for the generation of heat and electricity. And this will be customizable to customer needs. And this is the sweet spot we think we can operate in for our economics. And we think about commercialization as our primary focus. We think of the features needed as affordability, high reliability, high efficiency, with great flexibility and maintainability. And of course, since this is still a nuclear energy source, it will be regulated. And we've already begun having conversations with our regulators in the US, the NRC. And so I'm going to stop with this slide because I think it's a good place to open up to Q&A. But this is our roadmap to commercialization. So what we've done so far is that we have a currently operating prototype, which is behind me, and the same picture here reflected in the commercialization roadmap. We made this discovery and we filed the patent of this new technology and approach to fusion. And currently we're building an upgraded device with our concept exploration phase, which is being funded by RPE. Looking ahead, we have 2 other phases prior to getting to full commercialization with the proof of concept in our net energy demonstration. And then following those phases, which are 4 tranches of investment required to get to a commercial product, we transition into our commercial phase in which we are generating recurring revenue by licensing our fusion power core designs to potential customers and provide supporting services for the construction and operation of these fusion power plants. And so that's the pitch that I'm going to start with. And then to talk about what we've done over the past few weeks, I would say that our technical approach is largely unchanged. And our immediate focus is on the raising money for the proof of concept, which is $30 million, while finishing our concept exploration phase of R&D that's currently underway. But what our conversations with mentors have been especially great at doing is it's provided us new ideas about how to structure our business itself, and also how to pursue a business model and how you can do this technology play in a lot of different ways. Additionally, improving our visibility in an increasingly crowded R&D field, and securing additional government funding. And all of these elements are going to be needed for successfully commercializing. And so we already plan to have additional discussions going forward with these mentors to continue helping us on our path to commercialization. And just to finish up here, we would very much enjoy participating in this accelerator. Thank you for having us, and a big thank you to our mentors as well. So with that, I'll open it up to Q&A.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Derek. Wonderful.
Of course.
All righty. Okay, anyone want to go first? Oh, Lucina, you're reminding me with your virtual claps. Okay, who would like to go first from the mentors?
I have a very simple question. How are you going to use the prize-winning money if you get it? It looks like it's very small compared with what you need.
Sure. So it is true that today we've secured $5 million of non-dilutive public funding. So the prize money is not a huge fraction. I would say what it would help us most with is everything we can't fund with government funding. So on the business development side, there's a lot of restrictions as to what you can do with public funding. And so we find that doing the business development would be the primary usage of those funds. But you're correct, in orders of magnitude, 5K isn't going to do much for the proof of concept for 30 million.
Thank you.
It's a nice tip. Okay, next one up. Who has another question here? Tom Chi, you asked a question in the chat. Do you want to ask it here?
Yeah, I can read Tom's email here. So you mentioned 5 cents as a target is something that is carefully modeled. Yes, Yeah, absolutely. So as far as the models we use, yes, that is a calculated projection. So what goes into it is the CapEx, the OpEx, and then the cost of borrowing money. I would say that the biggest uncertainty, the biggest driver in the cost of a fusion power plant is CapEx dominated. And so what you can do is that you can project forward for the first of a kind fusion power plant using current prices for technology, or maybe slightly reduced prices, assuming the supply chains develop a bit over the next few years. But then the 5 cents per kilowatt hour is the nth of a kind projection once you have your economies of scale all the way up. And so you can project how the cost of all these CapEx pieces of equipment will come down as a function of time. And that's where that 5 cents per kilowatt hour comes from.
I think he's elaborating on his question as we speak in the chat.
Yeah, so I would say, yeah, so the OpEx is a very small fraction. So it's around 15 to 10% of the total cost, and the rest of it is CapEx. Yeah, so it's a very high CapEx technology.
Fantastic. All right. Any other questions? We still have minutes or so. Oh, Deandra, would you want to go for it? You're welcome to unmute yourself whenever you'd like.
Yeah, sure. I'm just curious, as far as like with commercialization, do you anticipate having any, I guess, like community engagement or just the implementation? Do you expect there to be any NIMBYism for your project?
I mean, I would say there's always NIMBYism of some kind for any new technology. As far as what we're doing to address that, I mean, we do think that the benefits of fusion do speak loudly for themselves, but that's not a necessary or sufficient condition to success. So we already do engage with the public and our regulators at this early stage so that we can ensure that there's an understanding that this is not your grandfather's nuclear power plant. This is a very different type of product. And so the main things that drive public concern about nuclear power, like meltdowns and all this long-lived radioactive waste, that's gone. It's not present in fusion at all. And it's not an engineering elimination of it. It's a physics elimination because it's entirely a different physical process. But that is very much on our mind all the time, and we do make effort on ironing out any potential issues going forward.
Thank you. Any other
question?
I see Kriyan has his hand up for quite some time. Then maybe
I heard someone else just ask.
Giovanni.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Should I go? Or someone wants?
Either one, whoever wants to go.
Okay, I'll ask my question then. So I'd like to know, your proof of concept machine that's sitting behind you operates on what power scale?
Yeah, so fusion is kind of a unique power source in that it's very nonlinear. And so what you can do is that you can just basically sort out a lot of the physics involved in getting to the right performance regime for fusion without actually making a ton of power. And that's by choice, because as soon as you start making power, it becomes, you have to get rid of it somehow. And so what you do in fusion is that a lot of the R&D, you do very low power outputs to make sure all of the magnetic confinement works. And then eventually you increase the temperature at the end, put in the fuel that you need for fusion, and then you make tens to 100 megawatts of fusion power. And so right now we're not focused on power production, but we're just focused on a fully integrated technology demonstration of all the component subsystems working.
No, I understand, but the physics gets a little different when I mean, I know very little about fusion, but I know a little hydrodynamics. And so when you scale up the power, I mean, as far as I know, normally there are new problems coming, new instabilities, and so I thought that this is what, kind of has been limiting really the progress in nuclear.
Yeah, it's not as much scaling up the power causes more issues. That's more of an engineering thing. It's more of when you scale up the temperature, new physics comes to light. And so the temperature for fusion, it doesn't really flip on until you get to about 80 million degrees. And so we've got up to around 1 million, and we're seeking in our proof of concept to get up to 10 million. And so that temperature range, the physics of the plasma physics underneath, is actually quite similar to an eventual reactor. It's just not producing a ton of power. Funny enough, the power production aspect, that's the only part that's actually nuclear physics. I would say that's one of the easiest parts to understand. It's getting the system put together in a self-consistent way that can get you to that regime. That's what we're focused on.
All right, lovely. Thank you so much.